book reviews for you, but actually I'm going to be reviewing the books themselves and also the audio versions, because I listen to a lot of these books on audio. I did dip in and out of the audio and the physical book because I do like to do that, and I do own the physical book for all three of these, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about both and how I found each reading experience and also what the story is about. So let's get started. The books I'm going to show you are these three: Lagoon by Noni Okorafor, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and Nevernight, which is by J. Kristoff. Quite a range of different things. The first one I have to talk to you guys about is Noni Okorafor's Lagoon. I listened to all of this book, I think. I dipped in and out a little bit to just make sure that I knew how the names were spelt, but mostly I listened to this because I tended to listen to this whilst I was commuting places. I've been working up in London recently, and so I've been listening to audiobooks a lot more, and I really like the audio narrator for this. I have to say that this is a sort of author that I struggle with a little bit. Everyone seems to really enjoy Noni Okorafor's work, and I just find it a little hard to get into. I don't find it as exciting as some people, I think. Maybe I'm missing something? I don't really know. Basically, there's just something about it that makes me not quite connect with the characters. It's always full of really interesting ideas, but I think having the audiobook narrator made this way better, because this is set in Nigeria, and the two narrators are Adjoa Ando and Ben and Wakwe, and the two of them together just seem to really bring this book to life for me. It did seem like they knew the pronunciation a lot better than I could ever do it. I don't know how genuine it was to the dialect of Lagos, which is where this is set. I've heard from a few people the dialect is not quite the same as where it was based, but for me, someone from England who doesn't really know, it made the book feel way more genuine and authentic to me, because I had never really heard that accent, let alone met someone who was distinctly from Lagos, and so it was just really great to have the story brought to life in that way for me. So what is this story about? This is the hard thing to explain. It's about a world where it's kind of a normal everyday day, and then these three characters kind of coincidentally meet each other on a beach. It's quite late at night, and the beach, for some reason, something starts to happen. Something magical, something weird, something crazy starts to happen, and this alien type species gets introduced into this storyline via one main character who we meet, and she kind of integrates herself with these three other main characters, whether they like it or not, and it kind of evolves into a first contact story, but from people coming up from the lagoon in Lagos. It's very weird, very interesting. It's got some really good moments, but I felt for me the characters were a little bit lacking in the actual story rather than in the audiobook, where they definitely felt alive. They just didn't seem to connect quite to me as well as I would have liked. But overall, it is a good story. It's definitely interesting, and I do think I will continue to try out Noni Okorafor's work, because if nothing else, she has very original ideas, and I do really like that. So this was the first one. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. I'd certainly recommend the audiobook over the book in this one, because I think that the audiobook felt way better for me and it might have got a lower rating without. The next one I have to talk to you about is Nevernight by J. Kristoff. Now I have to say I went into this with pretty high expectations, and I first off tried to read the book, and the book just did not grip me for some reason. The writing style, the way it began, it didn't really capture my imagination as much as I thought it was going to. It didn't really draw me in, it didn't really keep me entertained, and there were other books I was reading at the same time that were just better, so maybe that was part of the problem. But I don't know what it was, it just didn't grip me, and I really love all of J. Kristoff's other stuff. I really enjoyed Illuminate, and I love the Lotus War series, so I definitely had high hopes for this. Now, saying that, as the story went on, it did get better, but in order for the story to go on, I had to pick up the audiobook version, because I thought there's no way I'm going to get through this if I can't even get through the first 100 pages in the book. What is going on? So I picked up the audiobook, and the narrator for the audiobook is Holter Graham, who I'd never heard before, I don't think, on any other audiobooks. He didn't seem to do a bad job at the narration. I didn't think it was great either. I think it was kind of so-so. It didn't really stand out as anything particularly unique to me. It was just okay. But I do think it really helped me get through the book having the audio version, because it meant that when I was out and about I could just pop it in and listen to it, and I didn't feel like it was a chore because I was always doing something else. Now, for a book to only feel good to me whilst I'm out and about is not really a high compliment, but I will rectify that by saying that the second half of this book was really, really solid. I just think the first half was really drawn out for what happens. We follow a young girl called Mia Corvair, and she, at the very beginning, seems to be on this quest to try and find this order and learn from them. And we realise that she has been abandoned by everyone in her life, her family's been killed, and she is on a mission for revenge. And I think this is the first one in a series, so I'm sure there will be other ones. I think the second half of this book was really bang, 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 super action-packed, super exciting. And by that time I knew the characters and I kind of understood the magic, so it was kind of interesting. But in the beginning it's very, very slow-paced, and we have two different storylines. We got the present day one and her past storyline, and I think it gets a bit confusing at first what's what. Once you get to know that Mia has this kind of shadow cat creature that follows her around, you realise that actually she's got some pretty cool powers and she's a bit of a badass, to be honest. She also meets some other characters later on and they get into all sorts of things too, and I think generally this does grow into itself. But for me it was a slow beginning, and I do think without the audiobook I'm not sure I would have got to this as soon as I did. I am glad to have it, and I was sent this one for free from Harper Voyager to review, but I just think it's maybe not as good as the Lotus War series and Illuminae for me. It doesn't quite live up to that bar that I really hoped it was going to be, and maybe that's just the problem, was I went into it with super high expectations. But yeah, the cover is beautiful, so that's a plus, I suppose. But I have finally finished this for you guys who were saying, why haven't you read Nevernight yet? I have now read it, I have now listened to it. It's a strange one. The second half is really, really good. The first half is slow. I think the second book, hopefully, will be a lot better because we'll be straight into the action and straight into everything exciting. Fingers crossed that's what happens. I ended up giving this a 3.5. I did enjoy it more than Lagoon, even though the audiobook was better of Lagoon than this one. I felt like the book itself was better in this one, probably because it's got a lot more pages, a lot more depth to it. It's also got some boring bits to it, so there's pros and cons, but I felt like I got to know the characters a lot better in this, and that was something I really liked. And the final one that I have to review for you guys is Orson Scott Card's Ender's Game. Now I have to say, and I have to preface this by saying, Orson Scott Card has some very homophobic and really nasty views that he likes to be quite vocal about online. I do not agree or support any of those views, and every book of Orson Scott Card's that I've read or that I've bought has always been second hand, which means I'm paying him no money, so do not worry about that. I don't necessarily think that because he is a nasty person I can't read his books. I think that's just depriving myself. As long as I get them second hand and I'm not supporting him directly, I feel like that is not really a problem. But I will say, if you do associate the author and the art that they create as one thing, maybe you want to steer clear of Orson Scott Card's work. If you do have the ability or want to separate the two in your mind like I do, then maybe you will want to check this out. So with all that said, I think this book is fantastic, and I have to say that because I genuinely loved it. It was so, so good, and I kind of knew that I would because I've already seen the film whenever that came out a few years ago. I really enjoyed the film because I hadn't read the book, and I think the book is better, but because I really, really enjoyed the film, I kind of knew that I would enjoy this, and I did. I genuinely loved it. It was so, so much fun. It was filled with really great ideas, and it still felt really current. This was written a good few years ago now, and it still felt really, really current and really modern and really exciting, and I just loved it. We follow a young boy called Ender who is very, very clever, very intelligent, and he is kind of being trained up to go to battle school, and he does so in the first early chapters of this book. He gets separated from his family, he never sees them or speaks to them when he's at battle school, and he just has to go and train through all of these simulations. He gets to meet people who look down on him because he's one of the youngest people there, and he faces a lot of challenges to kind of prove himself to everyone else, and also to just fight against the alien races and systems and all these horrible people. And yeah, it's a big adventure he goes on, and I just think it's fantastic. So even though Orson Scott Card is not a great guy, I do think his writing in this book and the other book I've read by him were very, very good. I have heard that his writing of later books kind of lets his own homophobic and nasty views trickle in, so I'm not sure if I would say read all of his stuff, but definitely his earlier work like Ender's Game, does seem really, really, really good, and I really enjoyed it. So really, really liked this. I did listen to the audiobook version for this one too, and the audiobook narrators are Stefan Rudnicki, who I think was the main narrator, if I'm correct, Harlan Ellison, and Gabrielle de Keur. All of them were good. All of them definitely brought the story to life. I felt like the whole thing just worked really, really well, and I will certainly be picking up the next one in the series, probably on audiobook too. I already have the second one in the series in paperback form, but I'll probably get the second one on audio too, because I just really enjoyed the experience. It's quite an action-packed story, but there are moments where we get a look inside Ender's brain at what he's thinking, and we also get these sort of simulations and VR that he goes into, and I think having that read aloud really helped me to visualise it as well, as though I was in the simulations and I was experiencing the story firsthand, which I loved. So I would hugely recommend both the audiobook and physical book of this one, and this was by far my favourite of the three I've just reviewed. So do let me know if you've read Ender's Game. I'm sure a lot of people have if they read science fiction and fantasy, because it is a very, very well-known book. I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in my next video very soon. Bye!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.